Hey there, Eric Chessen, founder of Autism Fitness, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a concept or a strategy, something that we use to great effect for our autism and neurodivergent athletes in autism fitness programming, and bring it to you so that you can use it in your own fitness and adapted PE programs. Of course, before I get started, please definitely subscribe. We're trying to hit whatever number of subscribers. Let's get to 3,000 already. This stuff is cool and it works. And finally, I already said subscribe, so that's it. But I guess if you're ready to become an Autism Fitness certified pro, pause this video, go to autismfitness.com, download your course syllabus, and learn all about how you can bring outstanding fitness programming into the lives of the neurodivergent individuals that you serve. So, in this Tuesday training, I'm going to be talking about sand and pebbles and rocks. And it's not a geology course. No, it's actually talking about how to prioritize certain things in our programming for our athletes. Because if everything's important, then nothing is important. And if tiny things are too important, then we don't get to the big things and it can be confusing. And then we ask, well, what are we actually trying to do here? So I am certainly not the first one. In fact, I'd love to give credit, but I forgot where I got it from. I think originally it was in a Dan John article about the perspective of looking at the most important, the secondary, and then the tertiary or less important stuff. And we can relate that to exercise. In fact, we can relate it to the whole PAC profile that we use in autism fitness programming to assess and address. So from the physical, the adaptive, and the cognitive. So let's get back to the analogy. You have a jar, and hopefully it's not a very nice jar because it's about to get filled with some stuff. It's going to be filled with rocks and pebbles and sand. So the big rocks in this analogy are our fundamental exercises, our squats, our pushes, our pulls, our carries, our hinges or deadlift, picking stuff up off the floor, because those are the exercises that are going to have the most dramatic impact on strength, on motor planning, on stability, and on stamina that are going to generalize to activities of daily living. Those are going to get our athletes stronger and better in their daily tasks. They generalize or carry over into all of these other different aspects, whether we're talking about vocational or leisure, getting up and down a flight of steps, sitting and standing, standing up from being on the floor. All of these things in addition to the development of lean mass, which is particularly important as our athletes age in order to combat muscular atrophy and issues with bone density, even balance and falling. Lean mass is key there, right? So those are our big rocks. So when we're looking at putting together a session or a fitness program, rather than say, oh, we need 12 or 15 or 20 different exercises, we want to focus mainly on the ones that are going to have the biggest impact. So those are our rocks. Let's talk about our pebbles. So pebbles are a little bit smaller than the rocks, still important, but if we don't necessarily get to them, it's not an emergency. We're not losing out on pivotal or critical aspects of programming. And we can put some of our power exercises here, like our medicine ball push throws, our scoop throws. Important, power development is important for a variety of daily tasks when we're pushing open a heavy door and we have to use a lot of force to do that. Power exercises absolutely have their place and we want to include them, however, probably not at the expense of our big rock exercises. So our power exercises and then some of our secondary exercises, like our accessory exercises, we could say unilateral exercises like a lateral raise or a bicep curl. Great exercises, not taking away from these exercises, but in the grand scheme of what we're trying to achieve with our athletes, is the bicep curl going to be more important than that squat pattern, especially when we're first starting out, all right? And particularly when we have time constraints around a session. If we only have 45 minutes once or twice a week and we want to develop these fundamental skills, is that bicep curl or that lateral raise really going to be necessary right now? Probably not. We have more important things to get to, and that's why we are going to consider some of these, not smaller movement patterns, but again, accessory movement patterns as secondary. So those are our pebbles. And then finally, we have our sand. Sand kind of fills up the rest of the jar. It takes up space. But these are not the most important exercises that we can be doing. We can even include some games in this as well. So games can be highly reinforcing, but they're not necessarily going to improve the strength and motor skills. Can they have a beneficial effect on maybe coordination, maybe on speed, maybe on focus? Yeah, absolutely. Again, it doesn't make them bad. It just means that in terms of priority, we're not going to spend the entirety of the session on a game when we know that that our athlete is going to need strength and stability and better motor planning in order to be able to play that game even better. Some of the other things that we can consider: sand, adding cardio to a session. So the reason I bring this up is I get a lot of questions about cardio. And not many things in terms of your general daily needs in terms of cardiovascular activity: walking around the block a few times, getting your steps in, having a step counter, wherever you do it. So we certainly wouldn't prioritize walking on a treadmill in a session, but walking in general is something that we want to do throughout the day. You don't really need to be in a gym in order to get your steps in. In fact, if you live in a place where the weather is temperate, and even if not, it's the case that you never have to really get your cardio or your steady state work in the gym. So rather than jumping onto a treadmill and saying, okay, we're in the gym, so we have to do the treadmill, get that stuff done outside. Go to a park, walk around the block, make it a social activity as well. So in terms of exercises, we have our rocks, we have our pebbles, we have our sand. And then we can look at things from an adaptive perspective. So what are going to be our big rocks for adaptive functioning? Our big rocks for adaptive functioning, meaning motivation, reinforcement, and focus, are going to be establishing a trusting and positive rapport with that athlete, and of course having effective communication as well. So the big rocks of adaptive functioning require us to understand what that athlete needs, how to communicate effectively with them, and then of course providing effective reinforcement so that that athlete is much better able to stay on task, to stay motivated throughout this session, so that we can get more accomplished and produce, of course, a training effect where the athlete gets stronger, is more stable, and has a better motor pattern for each exercise. Then we look at things from a cognitive perspective. What are our big rocks from a cognitive perspective? Well, communication is a big one because we want the athlete to be able to understand what the expectations are around an exercise. So again, it comes back to effective communication with the athlete. Does the athlete understand how to perform this particular exercise, and are we following that label, demonstrate, do, and cue model so that the athlete has as much of an opportunity to be successful with that movement pattern as possible? So rather than over-explaining, which is endemic in coaching, rather than over-explaining, we want to show the athlete how to do the exercise so that they can be quickly onboarded, start doing the exercise, we're assessing it, and then we can make whatever changes by progressing or modifying the exercise as possible. So to bring everything back together to the bottom of the mountain from where all the rocks and pebbles and sand have fallen down, we put them back in our jar. And remember, those big rocks are almost always going to remain those fundamental exercises: push, pull, squat, carry, hinge. And then we can add in some of those pebbles as well, some of those accessory exercises when they make sense. All right? And of course, these are all the programming strategies that you get in the Autism Fitness certification, autismfitness.com to learn more. And those big rocks with respect to adaptive and cognitive functioning, communication, reinforcement, and having a great relationship with that athlete, getting into their interests, having the conversations that they want to have so that we develop a great rapport so that that athlete wants to continue in their fitness journey. And this is our jar of, awesomeness? Jar of awesomeness. Yes. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. I hope this has been helpful for you philosophically and practically. If you're interested in learning more about the Autism Fitness curriculum, head on over to autismfitness.com. And of course, I'd love to know what you think. Leave those thoughts in the comments below. And if you have a topic you'd like me to cover in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training, leave that in the comments below also. I'm told it helps the algorithm. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back with another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training.